The easiest way to lose $1 million is to tell the world you have it. We are taught to believe that wealth is a loud event. We expect fireworks. We expect a shift in the baseline gravity of our lives. We are conditioned by a hyper-visible culture to assume that crossing the seven-figure finish line comes with an immediate, undeniable sense of vindication. But it doesn't. When you finally cross that threshold, the universe does not offer a sign. The walls of your rented apartment do not suddenly feel more secure. The ambient anxiety that has lived in the back of your throat for a decade does not magically dissolve. Instead, a freezing realization settles into your bones. You are precisely the same person you were a second ago. But now you are holding a ledger that carries a dangerous amount of weight. You look at the screen, you look at the number, and then you do the most terrifying thing a modern human can do. In an era of relentless self-promotion, you close the laptop, you open your door, and you step out into the cold morning air, completely, utterly silent. You tell absolutely no one, because you realize the moment you share your freedom, you give others the power to turn it back into a cage. The journey to this silence did not begin with a grand strategy. It began with a slow, agonizing erosion. Think back to your mid-20s, the endless, gray loop of corporate survival. You remember the exact texture of those winter mornings, walking into an office building while the sky was still dark, leaving long after the sun had set. You were trading your life in increments of 15-minute intervals, logged meticulously on a timesheet for a company that would replace your desk before your obituary could be printed. You remember the phantom vibrations, your phone buzzing in your pocket at 11:30 p.m. A Slack message from a middle manager who was projecting their own existential dread onto your inbox. Your heart rate would spike. A cold sweat would break out across your palms. To cope, you developed an obsession, a quiet, clinical fixation on numbers, while your co-workers spent their Friday nights spending $60 on mediocre cocktails to complain about the very jobs that funded them. You went home. You opened a spreadsheet. You watched the slow, painful movement of index funds. You began to view every single purchase not through the lens of currency, but through the lens of time. A $70 dinner wasn't just $70. It was 4 hours of your life, 4 hours of sitting under buzzing fluorescent lights, 4 hours of pretending to care about quarterly deliverables. So, you cut the cord. You started declining the invitations. At first, your friends called you antisocial. Then, they called you cheap. Eventually, they stopped calling altogether. You watched their lives move forward through the cold, glowing glass of your phone screen. Weddings you skipped, weekend trips you couldn't justify, group chats that slowly faded into silence. You were trading the currency of youth for the promise of future autonomy. You ate cheap meals out of plastic containers at your desk while your peers bought luxury vehicles on 72-month payment plans. You became an island, a ghost living inside the machine. Your net worth was growing, but the human infrastructure around you was systematically turning into a graveyard. You convinced yourself it was worth it. You told yourself that once you hit the number, the isolation would make sense. Then came the day. It wasn't a dramatic afternoon on a trading floor. It was a completely unremarkable Tuesday. It was raining outside. The window of your room was clouded with condensation. You were sitting in your worn office chair, your neck aching from 5 consecutive hours of staring at a monitor. You opened your personal dashboard. You hit refresh. The screen blinked. The numbers realigned. 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. $1 million. Net. You sat there. The cursor continued to blink, steady, rhythmic, entirely indifferent to the fact that your life's singular objective had just been fulfilled. You expected a surge of adrenaline. You expected to feel a sudden wave of relief wash over your chest. You thought you might cry, or laugh, or at the very least, breathe a sigh of genuine comfort.
But the room remained completely silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. You looked down at your hands. They were the same hands. You looked around your room. The paint was still peeling near the baseboard. You checked your phone. There were no messages, no alerts. The world outside your window was moving at its exact, chaotic pace. People were sitting in traffic on the interstate. People were arguing in corporate boardrooms. The realization hit you like a physical blow. The milestone was entirely internal. The financial goal you had built your entire identity around for the last 10 years was just a sequence of pixels on an LCD screen. It possessed no mystical power to cure your underlying exhaustion. It didn't undo the years of missed family dinners. It didn't bring back the friends who had slipped away while you were staring at charts. You realized that wealth, in its truest form, is completely anticlimactic. It is the absence of an emergency, not the presence of a luxury. You closed the laptop screen. The room became darker. You stood up, walked over to the kitchen, and made a cup of instant coffee. It tasted exactly the same as it did when your bank account was empty. And in that quiet moment, the urge to speak died. The temptation to tell someone is an incredibly heavy instinct to fight. We live in an economic system designed to make us broadcast our wins. We want to see the look on people's eyes when they realize we made it out. We want our parents to finally stop worrying. We want our peers to view us with a newfound sense of respect. But you chose the shadow. You thought about your family. You imagined telling your parents. You knew exactly what would happen. The subtle, invisible shift in the atmospheric pressure of the relationship. Suddenly, you are no longer just their child. You are a financial safety net, a strategic option. You thought about your friends, the few that remained. If you tell them you crossed 7 figures, you create an instant, unbridgeable chasm. The next time you grab a simple meal, the air will turn cold when the bill arrives. If you pay, it feels like charity. If you don't, it looks like greed. Every complaint they have about their rent, their debt, or their bad bosses will suddenly feel like a veiled accusation directed at your comfort. Their eyes will subconsciously track your clothes, your shoes, the car you drive, looking for signs of the secret wealth you possess. Jealousy is a quiet, venomous thing. It doesn't manifest as open hostility. It manifests as small, passive-aggressive remarks. It shows up as a slight delay in their smile when you succeed. By keeping the number to yourself, you protect them from their own insecurity, and you protect yourself from their resentment. So, you wear your old clothes, you drive the same reliable, boring sedan. You nod along during conversations when people complain about inflation and the price of groceries. You wear wealth like an invisible, heavy cloak under your regular clothes. It keeps you warm, but no one else can see the fabric. You become a keeper of a profound secret. It gives you an incredible sense of power, but it also deepens the solitude. You walk through social gatherings like a traveler from another dimension. You are there, but you are fundamentally operating on a completely different set of rules. The true illusion, however, is thinking that the money makes you free. A few weeks after hitting the number, you find yourself standing in the aisle of a local grocery store. You are looking at 2 different brands of paper towels. One is $3 cheaper than the other. Your brain automatically spends 20 seconds calculating the long-term utility versus the cost. Then, you catch yourself. You stop. You have $1 million in liquid and invested assets. You could buy every single paper towel in this store and not affect your financial trajectory for the year. Yet, your hand still hesitates. The realization is terrifying. You escape the financial rat race, but your mind is still running on the wheel. The scarcity mindset that allowed you to accumulate this wealth has become your permanent mental architecture. You spent a decade training your brain to see threats everywhere, to view spending as a vulnerability, to treat joy as an unnecessary expense. Now, you can't turn it off. You sit in the same morning traffic jam. You look out the window at the sea of tired faces staring through their windshields. You have the financial runway to quit your job today. You could hand in your badge and walk out into the sunlight. But you don't, because the corporate machine didn't just take your time. It took your sense of security. You start making new justifications. 1 million isn't what it used to be. What about hyperinflation? What if the market crashes 40% tomorrow? The goalposts don't just move. They disappear entirely. You realize that the cage wasn't the job. The cage wasn't the apartment. The cage